Our first speaker for the night is Barb Knutson.
Thank you, Lee. I don't think I'm touching this. Thanks to all of you for coming out tonight. It's so nice and cozy out there. I'm sure you wanted to just get out on the road, but it's really nice to see faces again. Not Zoom meetings, not phone call meetings. It's really nice to see you all, so appreciate that. First of all, do we have any new officers in the room? Good. How about first-time attendees at the workshop? Oh, that's really good too. Appreciate it. It's nice to have you with us. The thing that I am like a broken record on is the dues. And for anyone that's in a county that has dues paid to the association, if you have a county association, they need to be paid through the association, and then the association pays to the state. And it works a lot better when it's done that way. It kind of gets messy otherwise. So the one for Stutzman County is Philip Hoffman. Is he here? Okay. So that's your man. That's who you give your dues to. And it's really important that these dues are paid in a timely fashion, so the person collecting them doesn't have to chase you down on a combine or anything like that to get them. So pay them into him, and it makes his job a lot easier. The mailing list, I work on that, and I can't tell you how important it is to get the names, addresses, telephone numbers, cell phone numbers if you want to share that, emails, blood type, no, just kidding. But after you do your annual meeting in March, just make sure that you put all of your officers on that with their information and get it to the auditor. The auditors have been very good to help us with our mailing list, and they can only help us with information is as good as what they get. So we need to make sure that that information gets in and get it off your desk. I hate stuff like that hanging around, and once in a while I let that happen. And so it's a lot more fun when somebody else has it. Is there anyone in the room that is not getting the grassroots? I know there's one person, and I've got that name down, but is there anybody that is not getting the grassroots report that should be? If so, get with me and I'll make sure that your name is and address is correct on the list. Other than that, that's about all I have tonight, but thanks again for being here, and thanks for what you do. It's important.
Thank you, Barb. Barb kind of touched on emails, and I guess I'd like to kind of visit a little bit more with that. We've been trying to become more efficient and effective, and one of the things we've been trying is to get and stay in touch with all township officers, and by doing that we were hoping that we could get all email addresses from townships. We have right now on our webpage, if you go onto the homepage, in the center section of that, it'll say township officers have a chance to win $50. What we've come up with, the board of directors has come up with, is that they will have a drawing after the workshop tour here, and we're making an attempt to get as many email addresses as we can. If you go on there and click onto that spot, you can actually put your email address in and submit that so that your name can be put in for the $50 cash prize. One of the reasons that we're asking for the email addresses is because of meetings like this. The last two sessions we've mailed out postcards, and some areas it works, and some areas we find out that a week after the meeting, the township officers get the postcards, and that doesn't do us much good. The second item about the postcards is it is only sent to the clerks, and we've also heard that the clerks get them. However, they forget to notify the supervisors, and so supervisors didn't make it to meetings that they may have wanted to attend. During legislative session, it's very important to try and get a hold of you in the case of the fact that there might be a bill that's up for a vote, and we need your help. We need you to reach out to your representatives and talk to them and have them understand your situation as a township officer. So hopefully that they will vote in a positive way for the townships. And by doing that, if we had your email addresses, we could be much more efficient, and hopefully we could stay in contact with you better than that. So if you would, please, if you could go onto that website and enter that and have a chance to win $50. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Larry Syverson, and he will do the updates on the handbook.
Okay. Changes to the NDTOA Township Officers Handbook 2022 edition. The first page is not a change, but it's a thank you to the North Dakota Insurance Reserve Fund for funding this, the printing of this update. And Mark Verke loaded up all these boxes of books and hauled them around the state. It's about 5,000 pounds of paper involved in this printing and about a $15,000 printing bill. So we're getting a lot of support from our insurance company because they think this update is important, and we do too. So we hope you'll make good use of this. The first change is on page 3, the member price of the handbooks. It was $15, has now gone to $10. Page 28, Article 3 of the NDTOA Constitution. The amendment gives the NDTOA Board of Directors the option to allow electronic attendance of the annual convention and to allow voting by electronic means. Page 32, Article 4 of the NDTOA policy. The amendment added item 9, which provides for the appointment of NDTAP directors, as North Dakota is now an active member of the National Association of Townships. Also on page 32, added item 10, which concerns the conduct of NDTOA directors. Page 34, added Article 10 of the NDTOA policy, which provides policy for the NDTAP directors. Changes to the North Dakota Century Code. The 67th legislative session passed bills that affected 2,663 sections of the Century Code. They added some, amended some, and repealed some. We had to go through all those changes and see which ones affected laws that are in our handbook. Page 49, if your county does your zoning, this concerns the animal feedlot sections of the with the Department of Environmental Quality. Page 75, 24-03-06, 24-03-08, and on page 79, 24-06-26.1. This is just a change of the state agency that oversees drainage standards. Changes from the state engineer to the Department of Water Resources. Page 91, 32-12.1-03, liability of political subdivisions. This is the cap on lawsuits. What someone can sue the township or county for if there's an injury accident. Right now, the limit was $250,000 per individual and $1 million per occurrence. Each year it will go up a little bit. So in 2026, it'll be $500,000 per person and $2 million per occurrence. And then the legislature will meet again in 2027, and they may allow it to ramp up even higher. Page 110, 44-04-17.1, definitions. This is a list here of activities that are not considered meetings. So you don't, if you're involved in one of those, you do not have to send out public notices. And this adds the administration of examinations by a regulatory board when no other public business is considered or discussed. Page 114, 44-04-19, access to public meetings. There are several changes in this section covering the addition of electronic people that want to watch your meetings electronically, whatever. You have to make allowances for them. Page 115, 44-04-19.1, open records, open meetings. This exempts certain work your lawyer will be doing for you if you're involved in a lawsuit. Until it is settled, then everything becomes public. Page 116, 44-04-20, notice of public meetings. If a meeting is to be held by electronic means, the electronic address for attending must be included in the notice. Page 119, 44-08-21, recall of elected officials. The law was that any elected official in the state was subject to recall. There was a case where a township officer was recalled, and they found out the process did not work very well for township officers. So we got an exception in there that any elected official is subject to recall except the township officer. And there's another process developed for that a little bit further down. Page 143, 57-02-08, property exempt from taxation. Gross income does not include a gain from sale or exchange of farm machinery as computed for federal income tax purposes. So if a farmer sells his or trades his combine, he will not lose his farm home exemption because of the way the IRS treats the trading value of this used combine. Page 151, 57-02-08.8, property tax credit for disabled veterans. It was $67.50. It has been increased to $8,100. Page 158, 57-09-01, membership of the board, equalization meetings. The equalization meetings were always held on the second Monday of April until it became common that a lot of assessors worked for more than one township, so they couldn't have all the meetings in one day. So they were allowed to have their equalization any day in April. Then they allowed that even the assessors that only served one township could have equalization any of the first 15 days. Now it's been changed again. So any township can have the equalization any day in April. Another change here on page 159, 57-08, 57-09-06, assessor statement and return to the auditor. The assessor used to have to turn them in by the fourth Monday of April, but the fourth Monday might not be the end of April, so the equalization might not even be completed by then. So that has also been changed to the second Monday of May before the assessment has to be turned into the county. Page 169, 57-15-19.7, township levy for emergency purposes. Upon approval, a majority of electors of the township voting on the question, a township may levy the number of mills necessary for the purpose of addressing natural disasters or other emergency conditions. The levy under this section may be made only if notice of this question of the approval of the levy has been included with the notice of the annual or special meetings provided in Chapter 58-04. Approval by the electors of increased levy authority under this section may not be effective for more than 5 taxable years. So if your township votes in favor of it in a special meeting, or even the annual meeting, you could have an unlimited levy to deal with an emergency situation. But that would go away after 5 years. Page 169, 57-15-20.2, exceptions to tax limitations in townships. This section is the limit on what townships can levy. The normal limit is 18 mills. And of course, you can have the excess levy that brings it to 36. And now we also have this one that the emergency levy could also be higher than the 18 mil limit. Page 180, 58-03-11.1, farming and ranching regulations. This concerns animal feedlots, and the setback distance from feedlots is now measured from the edge of land zoned as a residential, recreational, or commercial district. Page 183, 58-04-02, special meetings. They added a third reason for special meetings, and that is the removal of an elected township officer. Page 183, okay. This is not a board meeting. It is a meeting of the entire township, complete with newspaper notice, which must state the items on the agenda. Who can vote? Any qualified elector may make and second motions and vote. Who is a qualified elector? A U.S. citizen, 18 years of age, who has lived in the township for the previous 30 days. Page 183, 58-04-02.2, removal of township officers in a special meeting. An elected township officer may be removed from office upon an affirmative vote of the majority of votes cast at a special meeting of the township, which is called for the purposes of removing an elected township officer. If an officer is removed from office at the special meeting, the voters shall elect a replacement officer at that same meeting. Page 197. This is the water section. And here again, it's just a change of the state agency. It is changed from the state engineer to the Department of Water Resources that oversees this section. Page 241. We have a new addition to the appendix. That is the FEMA, North Dakota Department of Emergency Services, procedures for townships. So if you have FEMA projects, there's a little information in there, some hints on the totals you have to take and things like that. Page 249 is the printed list of all the changes in this revision. I skipped over a bunch of them, but they're all listed on page 249, the next to last page. And on the very last page, page 250, is the list of regular township meetings. Now, a little plug for the Grassroots Leadership Award, which recognizes a township officer for outstanding services. Here we see this year's recipient, Marvin Heller from Warren County. He's just received the plaque from President Brandvold. Now, the Grassroots Leadership Award nomination form is on NDTOA.com, and it is also going to be carried in the Grassroots report a little later this year. And, you know, there's a lot of very good township officers out there that deserve this recognition. So please be sure to nominate them so they can get a little thank you and recognition for the work they've done. Any questions? Any questions? Well, I thank you for being township officers.
Thank you, Larry. One item that I'd like to bring up is where you can find that webpage, and that is in your new handbook. If you just turn from the front page, I believe it's a page number, the actual numbered page number 3, that is on there. So if you are looking for that, also on that, in that update, you will find the current list of all the state officers. So if you do need to get a hold of your director or one of us, president, vice president, whatever, we are in there in your handbook. And also on the webpage, if you go there, our contact information is there. So you can make sure that if you do need to get a hold of us, that's two areas that you can find us, and make sure that we stay in touch with it. So our next speaker is Kelley Bengtson from the Upper Great Plains Transportation Institute.
Okay, thank you for having me attend your township meeting tonight. It's good to be here. Glad the weather finally settled down so that we can get out and travel again. And my name is Kelley Bengtson. I work for North Dakota LTAP, and I started here in spring of 2020, about 2 weeks before the pandemic hit. I retired from Knutson County Highway Department the previous spring or previous fall, and this job came open, and I put in an application and decided to give it a whirl. So I spent 32 years in local government with the county. I was at the Soil Conservation Office. I was at the Highway Department, and served as a county engineer there for 23 years. Also, before the county government work, I was a township clerk for about 15 years. So I understand what you do and appreciate what you're doing, and thank you for what you have been doing and your continued future work. So we'll get into the slides here from LTAP. I'm going to talk to you tonight about right-of-way, road soft spot repairs, and some funding for townships. Little background on LTAP. It's under the umbrella of North Dakota State University and the Upper Great Plains Transportation Institute, which is located in Fargo. The main office is in the Quentin Burdick building right on campus there. So if you're in the area, stop by and say hello. This is the staff for LTAP. So you've got upper row there on the left, you've got Matt Johnson and Leanna Emmer, and then Kurt Glaso, Denise Brown, Dale Hegland is the director. And then in the bottom row on the left is Tim Horner, and then myself, and there's Jerry Weisgerber, Ed Ryan, and the newest gal, Jody, just started here about a week ago. Don't even know her last name, so I want to apologize for that. They have advisory board members, and their representation is from cities, counties, townships, consultants, federal highway, North Dakota DOT, and tribal representation as well. And the advisory board meets twice a year. We want to thank the townships, North Dakota Township Officers Association, for a $2,500 support fund that is provided to North Dakota LTAP. This map shows the organized townships in the state, as well as the unorganized townships. LTAP funding comes from primary sources of Federal Highway Department, the North Dakota DOT, the North Dakota Insurance Reserve Fund, and other grants such as yours from the Township Officers Association. And there's also partnerships that the LTAP group works with, and those are all listed here, including different companies and different agencies, including the Western Dakota Energy Association as well. This map shows the 53 counties in the state of North Dakota. There's 1,360 organized townships and 357 communities. So we get into the topics on the technical side here today. Right-of-way hazards. Vision Zero supports taking care of hazards that are located in road right-of-ways. The obstacles can include trees, brush, mailboxes, signs, billboards, farming into the right-of-way, power poles, road approaches, abandoned water wells. Just a few examples. And here's a few pictures of some of the lists that I just mentioned. There's a fence, there's trees and brush, there's mailbox, there's an approach that maybe isn't built to design standards. Of course, approaches are common, but the new design standards when roads are reconstructed, there's slope requirements on the approaches and shoulder width as well for reconstruction of roadways. And on the mailboxes, I don't have that slide in here, but there's a swing away mailbox that Grand Forks County is using. And I've seen those. We used to push those too. And they're mounted on like a 2 1/4 inch diameter muffler type pipe. They do a lot of crash tests at Federal Highway. So there's mailbox signposts that don't meet the crash test standards. And as vehicles are changed from year to year, phase to phase, the vertical elevation of the vehicles and the windshields change. So sometimes those mailbox standards change as well. So it's good to know about that. And when the snowplow comes by, the swingaways, you don't get too many phone calls, because the swingaway has some give to it, and it'll pivot out of the way when the snow hits it off the wing of the plows. Roadway soft spot repairs. So there's some pictures here of some roadways that have extremely bad soft spots in them. And here's one showing the subgrade material pumped up into the gravel surfacing. And you commonly see this in the spring during the thawing period, in about March, April, May. A lot of the roads were constructed with a mucker, and that's what this device is. It was either a pull type or a ground driven or a powered conveyor belt that elevated soil that was being cut in the disc down at the bottom there, and then pushed onto the conveyor belt and made a big windrow of dirt, and then that was leveled with motor graders. And back in the old days, those graders were probably either horse-drawn or pulled by crawler tractors. So everything that was on the side of the right-of-way was put into the embankment, and there wasn't a lot of hauling of specified aggregate materials to build roads. And unfortunately, we're dealing with some of those issues today now with the pumping and the soft spots that show up. Here's another example. This roadway, just my first observation would be it's going down through a low-lying area. There's poor drainage on either side. The road's thawing out, the frost is coming out of the road, so some loads have gone through here, and it's pumping up the subgrade into the gravel. I'm sure you've all seen this at one time or another. Here's a pretty serious problem where the vehicle actually cut down into the subgrade and forced all that black soil material up onto the top of the road. And nobody wants to be in one of these situations. I can't believe this one myself, but you get the motor grader stuck in there. I don't know how you're going to get it out without spending a lot of time and hopefully not doing any damage to it. So there's going to be some information coming up here now on what can be done to fix soft spots. And this is an example. I believe it's in Divide County, and we'll get into that here. This is some of the roadway that was going to be used in this test strip. You can see that the drainage is poor here. There's cattails growing up, and the water table is probably high. Sometimes subgrade soils will actually wick moisture up into the surface of the road. And if you don't have a positive drainage grade on your road ditches, you'll see issues like this. So the first thing that can be done is to do some testing. And this is a cone penetrometer test. where you drop a cone and determine how much it penetrated into the surface. And that is done in regular stationing. And that data can be used to sent to a laboratory, and then they can recommend a fix for your road. Helps determine the strength of the subgrade. I'm going to grab my sample of material here. So there's some pretty good products out there that are called geotextile material today, and this is a product that's made by Tensar. There's more samples in the back, and if you pull on it in this direction, it's really strong. And the intention is to hold the aggregates in place so they don't get pushed out by the wheels on the heavy vehicle. So I'll just pass this around for now, and you can look some more at the other samples that are on the table in the back. But in this slide, this material comes in rolls, and the rolls vary depending on the kind of product that you purchase in width, from 6 feet wide all the way up to 16 or 17 and a half feet wide rolls. So in this particular test, they rolled out the geotextile grid, the geogrid, and then they're putting a specified aggregate on top of that. And you want to put about 8 inches of gravel on top. Anything less than that, this material can pump up through. And once it gets exposed to the surface, the motor grader coming by to do maintenance is going to catch it and drag it and cut it or pull it out. So you want to have plenty of thickness of aggregate, and it's not uncommon to see up to 12 inches of aggregate on top of it. But in this particular test, they're using 8 inches. Another geotextile is just a fabric, and the fabrics provide separation to keep these subgrade soils from getting up into the gravel surfacing so that it doesn't get contaminated. They also slightly improve strength, but the strength improvement comes mainly from the geogrid materials. And this was commonly used maybe 20 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. Some of my recollection and my experiences with construction, but then that's evolved to build a stronger subgrade, a better road to using the geogrids. So this picture shows the confinement of the aggregate in the geogrid. It's like comparing it to a pool table where you stack up the balls with the rack, and it holds all those balls in place. So that's basically what the geogrid does, is it's holding the aggregates in place. The geogrids are sold with varying sizes of openings. So depending on the aggregate that you're using, if it's a 1 inch minus specified class 5, or a 3/4 inch minus specified class 5 for your largest rock, you'll want to match that size of the rock up to the geogrid that you're going to purchase. And here, this just shows how the truck and the load distributed down into the subgrade is supported by the geogrid here, keeping the aggregate in place versus forcing it out of position and creating an opening where the subgrade material can get pumped up into your gravel surfacing. This is just an example of a contractor, or maybe it's even a local government putting this out themselves, but they'll roll out the geogrid first. They'll dump some aggregate and they'll place it with some skid steer loaders to get it a mat on first. I've actually seen contractors drive on it with belly dump trucks and dump their first windrows. That's not recommended by the manufacturers, but I have seen it done and it has been successful. But you want to do it according to the way the manufacturer wants you to lay out the product on top of the geogrid. So for a 24-foot wide township road, if you had rolls that were 16 to 18 feet wide, you wouldn't have to have any overlap. There's other products that have 6 or 8 foot wide rolls, and you have to have an overlap, and the overlap is going to be specified, and it could be as much as 2 feet. And you want to make sure you get your aggregate on there uniformly, because when you have a joint in it, you can have some problems with wrinkles and the overlaps, the distance changing on you. So it tends to move around a little bit. But it is a good solid road. A lot of these windmill farms in southwest Minnesota, the counties, some of the guys I know down there, they had really good success using geogrids on just field roads that didn't really have any drainage ditches, the roads that were going to be used by the power company to get in and maintain their towers. They use geogrid and good specified gravel surface. So next, are there any questions on that? Any of the soft spot repairs? Pardon me. Well, I did some cost estimates using 8 inches of gravel on 18 feet wide, and then geogrid on a mile. Depending on your gravel costs for haul and in your location, it could range anywhere from $75,000 to $125,000 to do a mile. But if you equate that to a cost per foot, if you just have a short area, maybe 500 feet, you're looking at a range of $20 to $30 a foot. That may not include mobilization. Sometimes contractors charge mobilization to come in and bring their equipment in. So that might be an upcharge to get the equipment in there, but just a rough idea. It's going to vary. That's with the gravel. That includes the geogrid and the gravel. The geogrid's charged out by the square yard. And generally it's $1 for the geogrid or geotextile fabric, and the geogrid material is around $2 a square yard. Yeah. And yes.
Cheaper.
Right. Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I would say that lighter duty stuff is going to be closer to $1 a square yard, $1.50. And then the heavier duty is going to be in the $2 to $3 a square yard range. Yeah. $2 to $3 a square yard. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on and talk next about Township Transportation Funding Program. With an update on House Bill 1015. So the House Bill 1015 initially was put out last fall. There was $750,000 available for grants to townships from the North Dakota DOT. This money has all been committed now. They received $13.5 million in requests. So there was quite a gap there. And because of that, they're going to do another round. And the next round is going to be $10 million. And it has to have a matching grant to go with it. So Upper Great Plains Transportation Institute has hired a grants writer to help find the matching grant dollars to get this $10 million spent for the Township Transportation Funding Program. And I just met the fellow, today was his first day, and he's at NDSU, so he'll be getting started on some grant writing applications to help come up with $10 million in matching funds, hopefully. So the preliminary concepts and eligible projects for this funding program can include gravel improvements to your existing gravel roads. If you are approved for funding, the project has to be such that it's going to include at least 3 inches of gravel thickness. So it can't be just a maintenance surface of 1 inch of gravel. It has to be 3 inches minimum. And then they're also looking at bundling minor structure improvements, culverts, for example, across several townships. They're going to look at roadway flood resiliency improvements so that the roadway meets a logical design flow and for pipes along a waterway, for example. So if you have a roadway that commonly overtops with water, that might be an eligible project for these funds. And then signing improvement projects are also going to be considered. And they want to elevate the safety of your roadways by making sure that you have the proper signage out there. And here again, they'll be looking to bundle this with multiple townships. So this slide is just a picture of a gravel road that's had a 3-inch lift on it, just to give you an idea of what the improvement might look like. And so for truck traffic, ranging from 5 to 10 trucks per day. And if you have a subgrade strength that's considered to be a low strength subgrade, for example, a lot of black soils, a lot of heavy clay contents, the suggested minimum gravel layer for that road surface would be 8.5 inches of gravel. If you have 25 to 50 trucks per day, and you have here again a low subgrade strength that can be determined by that cone penetrometer test that I showed in a previous slide, the recommended gravel thickness on that would be 14.5 inches thick. Just to give you an idea of how much aggregate it takes to bridge those softer subgrades. It takes a lot of gravel. The geogrids, you could probably save 2 inches of gravel by using a geogrid fabric. There's gravel spreadsheets on the table in the back too. So the purpose of these is to show you on a certain width of roadway, how many cubic yards per mile you would need to put on to reach a minimum thickness. In this particular example is 8.5 inches of thickness of gravel. So if the road's 24 feet wide, you're looking at 4,155 cubic yards of material on that roadway. And if you're doing maintenance graveling, it's kind of handy. So then you'd be looking at 1 inch thickness, for example, on 22 feet width. That would be 448 cubic yards per mile. The flip side of that same chart has other information on it as far as if the trucker is hauling 12 cubic yards of gravel and your township wants to put on 1 or 2 inches thickness, it'll show you how far in linear distance that truck should be spreading that. So just for example, I think I recall a 12 cubic yard load on 1 inch of thickness of gravel should spread about 150 feet. And that's on the flip side of those charts. And they're on the back table there at the LTAP booth. So this is just a picture showing a roadway that may be eligible for these township transportation funding projects. And there's going to be some pictures that look like this spring, maybe when the snow melts, because there's quite a bit of snow in the eastern part of the state here. This is a washout. These might also be eligible. Culverts that are rusted out. Might not be a bad idea to start mapping out your culverts, especially the bigger ones, and get in there and with a flashlight and take a quick look and see what they look like. They might look good on the outside, but they maybe don't look too good on the inside. You get pipes that are 25 to 50 years old or older. it's probably time to put in a new culvert. This shows bridges in the state of North Dakota and the conditions that they're in. So the dots in red are the poor bridges, and the dots in yellow are fair, and the dots in green are in good condition. So just gives you an idea of the density of the locations of the bridges and the conditions that they're in. If you have bridges in your county that need some attention, doesn't hurt to just touch base with your commissioner, make sure they're aware of it. They probably already are. It's probably on a waiting list. But if you see issues, it's good to report those as soon as possible. We don't want to have any collapses happening, and you've all seen pictures in the news of bridge collapses, and it's not any fun to have to go through one of those. The U.S. Soy Transportation Coalition has some funding available in areas that grow soybeans for engineering costs on structures. So if you have a structure that doesn't qualify as a bridge, you know, bridges in North Dakota are recognized when they're 20 feet wide or wider. But if they're less than that, they're considered a minor structure. So if you have a 10x4 concrete box culvert, that doesn't have a bridge number on it, but it's still a hazardous structure if it collapses. And the Soy Transportation Coalition just wants me to remind the general public that they do have some funding available to pay for engineering costs, or assist with engineering costs at least. If you have more questions on the House Bill 1015 and the Township Transportation Funding Program, these are the contact people. I know Dale and Tim especially have been sitting in on some legislative committee meetings, so they know a lot more about it than I do at this point, and they know a lot of the details on what went into the plans and the concepts for that bill. So this is the North Dakota LTAP webpage. There's a lot of information on here. There's a search box. There's resources tab that you can click on. There's calendars of events for training. You know, they put on, Denise Brown does an excellent job with motor grader training for new operators. She's mobile. She goes to counties that have those needs and does training right at the county site. So it's a good program. In Minnesota, the county had to send their operators to St. Paul to get training. So nobody went, you know, so this is much better here. And this is a picture of one of the advisory board meetings that I attended in Bismarck with LTAP. So that's kind of the whole crew and the people that are involved with North Dakota LTAP, along with some of the other agency people. Larry's here tonight and Mark is here. So, and they do a great job, those guys. Brian Fuchs too with North Dakota DOT. So I think that's about it. Any final questions for me? If you haven't already picked up, there's a lot of free information on the LTAP table tonight. So feel free to grab that. There's information on gravel, information on dust control. There's soybean-based dust control, calcium chloride, mag chloride, frost action information. So that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Kelley. Like Kelley had mentioned, North Dakota LTAP offers some really good training programs, and I know that be a great benefit to township officers if they did take some of the training. They actually offer that training to township officers at no charge or a real minimal charge for any of the training that you do. So if you do see that on website, if you go on and you do see some training, go ahead and register and make sure you let them know that you are a township officer. And like I said, most training, they do not charge township officers at all, but if it would be kind of minimal. Just covering a little bit more on the House Bill 1015. In August, you received some state funding. That's where that funding came from, was from that House Bill 1015. There were actually 3 parts of that bill. There was a straight payment going out to non-oil producing townships. And then they based the next part of that bill by your township road miles. And the third part of it was that grant funding. And it's taken us a little bit, but we have gotten in order now that we do have the grant writer, and we are looking for that additional 10 million. The state already has 10 million to match, so it will be a grant program that will have $20 million available to townships. One other thing that bill did free up was the fact that prior to this last legislative session, townships couldn't work with DOT. And with that bill, they made sure that you are now able to work with DOT. So this is the outcome of it. We have this chance now that we do have this additional funding that we will be working on. So to keep up on it, you can either stay up with the North Dakota LTAP website, or we will put updates on our website as well. And I do know that North Dakota Upper Great Plains will actually be sending out some surveys, and that probably will be happening here fairly soon. So just be looking for them, and please fill them out and be patient, because this is, like I said, this is a new program, and hopefully we can get some money out to townships that need it. Okay, with that, I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Mark Verke from North Dakota Insurance Reserve Fund.
Yeah, okay, there we go. Like you said, I'm Mark Verke. I'm with the Insurance Reserve Fund, and I do come around every 2 years with the township officers, and just to highlight a few things that I do find when I'm out on the roads. And to start with, there just a little bit about the Insurance Reserve Fund, and part of our mission here is to be a source of risk services for North Dakota political subdivisions. And some of the coverages that we offer at the Insurance Reserve Fund is your liability coverage, which we've always done, and also automobile coverage. If your township owns any autos, trucks, things like that, we can cover those also with a auto policy. And then your public assets coverage, that includes all your mobile equipment, whether it's a computer that the township may own, we can insure that. Or if you have a motor grader, payloader, any type of equipment like that, we can write coverage for those types of things also. And some of the other coverages that we offer now through the Insurance Reserve Fund is the property coverage. And when we look at property coverage, we also have that through the Fire and Tornado Fund. Now we manage that program for the state. That used to work directly. Anybody that had buildings used to have to do that directly with the state. And now we manage the program. So there again, now that will get written through your local agent, and they in turn come to us with that. And that they talk about that on page 90 in your 2022 handbook that we have that we've just given out. And then the fidelity bond coverage, we also administer that program through the state bonding fund. And that's talked about on page 89 in your handbook. Just a little bit about when they talk about bridges, and there is a lot of bridges out around the country throughout the state. A lot of those do not meet requirements that they should, as far as weight limits and things like that. And if you are looking at bridges and weight limits, we've got a bridge here Fairly old bridge, not sure what the weight limit would be on it, because it isn't marked. And, but when you're looking at things like that, and you do find out what the weight rating would be on that bridge, don't forget that you got however much gravel here on top of that bridge also. That's a dead weight always on that bridge. So if it's a 20-ton bridge and you got 5 tons of gravel on there, that means you can only put another 15 ton on there. So make sure that you pay attention to things like that. Bridge end markers. Here we got a poor end marker here. It's kind of down in the grass there. It's hard to see. There's requirements as to signing, as to where they're supposed to be located. And where they're supposed to be located doesn't always take into consideration your farm equipment. But if they're not located where they're supposed to be, a lot of times then you can be held liable for that. The other thing is the placement or the installation of the signs. Here, this sign, naturally, it's not up high enough for the bridge end marker. It's the end marker for this bridge here is what it is. But you look at how it's installed. What's it telling you to do? Telling you to drive in the ditch. Yes. Now, is anybody going to do that out here that day? No. Not going to. But what happens 3 days ago when you got a snowstorm out here, the ditches are full, the road is covered, and you're driving down that road and you've never been there before. Where are you going to drive? Good chance you could drive down on this side of the sign because that's where it's telling you to drive. So you drive off into the ditch and you're out in the middle of nowhere. Maybe you freeze to death. Suppose that'll be a lawsuit because that sign was put in improperly. That's where signing is very important. Make sure that when you put those signs in, that you put them in right. The other thing with weight limits. Here we got a weight limit sign on here. What is it? 23 tons. So if you're coming here with a truck that weighs 30 tons, you're not supposed to cross this bridge. By the time you see that sign, even if the grass wasn't in front of it, what do you suppose the chances are you're going to get to stop? Not going to happen, is it? Because by the time you can read it, you're already gone. Put those signs back up the road far enough so that once you do read it, you know you're not supposed to be there, that you're going to be able to stop again before you get to that bridge. You could stop back up, turn around, whatever you need to do. This is a sign, a good sign. You know, restricted bridge, half mile ahead, and a weight limit of 13 tons. This is in Cass County. I took this picture. This is a township road, and I was sitting at the intersection there with a county road. They give you this warning so that if you shouldn't be driving down there, you know it right here, you're not going to drive down there. And part of the reason for doing that is because once you get down to the bridge, there is nowhere to turn around. It's a narrow road. It's kind of a marshy area. There's no approaches on it. And there's no place to turn around. So you're going to back up that half a mile if you drive down there. And there they give you that notice before you go down there so that you can find a different route. Is this common to see? No. It's not common at all. Is it good? Yes, I think it's a very good sign. But it's not common to see something like that. And that's why I took the picture, is because it is a good idea, but it's not real common. Now, the mounting of it probably isn't as high as what it should be. Any sign put out on your road, they're supposed to be 5 feet from a line straight out from the shoulder of the road, up 5 feet to the bottom of that sign. Now, how are you supposed to know all this if you're putting up signs, right? Well, that's pretty easy, because right here we've got a signing manual, signing reference guide. Kelley has sample one back here on the table, and if you want a copy of that, sign up on his sign up sheet, and they'll mail one out to you. We buy those books, the Insurance Reserve Fund. Every time they run short on these books, we buy more. Last week, we ordered another 200 of them so that everybody that wants one or can use one, needs one, can get one. This page 37 in that book, when you wonder where you mount signs, how you mount them, where they should be in the ditch, this page gives you direction on how far out, how high, and when they go talk about how far out do you go into the ditch, what they're doing is giving you a minimum distance from the shoulder of the road to the inside edge of that sign. They'll give you a minimum distance, but they're not saying how far out that you can go. And when we wonder how far out can we go, it has to be reasonable. It has to be somewhere where it's still obvious as to this is what the sign is for. But it's not where they got to be up, 5 feet from the edge of the road. You don't want them up there. And I think it's like 15 feet from the shoulder of the road to the inside edge of the sign, 12 feet or something like that. And like I say, this page tells you that. So if you're going to be putting up your own signs, get a book, make sure you put them up right. And if you hire the county to do it, they know what they're doing. They have sign people. They're going to install them the way they should be. Contractors, the same way. If you call a sign contractor and have them come in and do your signing for you, they'll be put up properly. Anybody got these signs out there on your roads? If you do, get rid of them. If you don't have any, good for you, don't put any up. Why would you want to tell a kid that road is a safe place to play? And that's what that sign does. Tells the kid that the cars are going to slow down for them. The trucks are going to slow down for them. They're not going to. Teach them to play in the yard. Don't play out on the road. Some counties have more of these than others. Where I took this picture, pretty obvious it's an oil country because they put the sign at an oil well site. Pretty doubtful that there's going to be any kids playing out there at an oil well site. But that's where they put the sign up at. That's why the signs don't mean anything to anybody, because this county has over 600 of those signs out. And anybody that wants one calls them, yeah, I want one of those, they'll go put it up. And so they've lost any value that they ever did have. So if you have them, get rid of them if you can. The other thing with those, if you do have them up and the people insist that you leave them up until their kids are grown up enough to where they're not playing around in the yard or playing on the road anymore, and then take them down. Don't just leave them there. I've seen these where they've been up for so many years that the face is worn off of them. And so make sure that you can get rid of those. Here again, standard mounting height, it's not high enough. It's a good sign. Not a through road, dead end. It used to be a through road, but over on the other side of this hill, the lake covered the road. And so when you go on this road, you go over the hill, there's a road, type 3 barricade there with a road closed sign on it to close that road. Here, they're just giving you a warning not to bother driving there if you think you need to go all the way through, because you can't get through there. Here we got a speed limit sign, 25 miles an hour. This is supposed to be a bump sign. The bump is for this crossroad up here. They rebuilt this crossroad and it's higher than what this road is. So you've got a bump here. First thing they did wrong was they put a speed limit sign on it. You don't want to put a speed limit sign here because nobody's ever going to enforce a speed limit there. What you want to do is put a bump sign at the top of that signpost, and then underneath that, put a speed advisory sign. If you think that 25 miles an hour is a safe speed to cross that bump, put a speed advisory sign down here at 25 miles an hour. You haven't changed the speed limit that way, but you have told them what you think a safe speed would be to travel on that road. If somebody hits with the way this is signed, if somebody hits this, they go airborne, they end up out in the ditch, rolled over. Now all of a sudden, the attorney comes back and well, you got a speed limit of 25 miles an hour here, but that speed limit's never been enforced. So it doesn't mean anything. And if you're going to have that speed limit sign, you need to enforce the speed limit. So if you just put a speed advisory sign below that bump sign, it's not an enforcement thing. They can drive however fast they want. You're just telling them how fast they should drive, not how fast they have to. Here we got a minimum maintenance sign. I don't have a problem with minimum maintenance signs as long as they are a true minimum maintenance road. Go to your green handbook and find out what it takes to be a minimum maintenance road. A grass prairie trail that you mow hay on once a year is not a minimum maintenance road, and don't sign them that way. And there's a lot of them out there that are signed that way. They're not minimum maintenance roads. Minimum maintenance road gets some maintenance. You get your gas tax money for a minimum maintenance road because you're doing maintenance. And also those have to be marked at the start, at the end, from both directions, and anything in between. And where it needs to be marked, make sure you check your manual before you do any of those. And then before you put signs up, make sure you can live with your signs. Because here, they put up this no through trucks sign to keep out oil trucks and water trucks. What they didn't intend to do is keep out their farm trucks, their grain trucks. But that's what this sign says, no through trucks. You can't drive through there with your farm truck. Now, I put the sign up. I can drive through there if I want to. So the farmers drive through on this road. The oil people see it. Well, if they can drive there, why can't I? It's the same thing. If you're not going to enforce it for one truck, you can't enforce it for the others either. Those signs apply to everybody. And sign maintenance. I made up my mind I wasn't going to talk about sign maintenance, because I've been doing it for the last 15 years, and either you're doing it now or you're never going to do it anyway. So why bother to talk about it? But sometimes you got to talk about it. Here we've got a sign, used to be a curved sign with a speed advisory sign underneath it. That's a north-facing sign. How long does it take to take the face off of a north-facing sign? I have no idea how many years that's been there. But you got a curve in the road there. And then they had the speed advisory there. Those need to be changed. You need to do your sign inspections so that things like this can be replaced. Obviously, with this curve, you need that sign, but it doesn't do any good. Now, is anybody going to drive off the end into the trees that afternoon when I was out there? No. But how about 3 days ago again, when everything is covered with snow, there's no retroreflectivity in that sign. So it's like the post isn't even there when you're driving on that road and it's a snowstorm. Where do you end up driving? Right off of the end into those trees. There again, now who's responsible for that? Whoever owns that sign is responsible for it. Here we got a yield sign that's been shot up. And a lot of signs get bullet holes in them. Just because you have one or two bullet holes in a sign, I'm not telling you got to go out and change that sign right away, because there are some places you could do that 2 or 3 times a week if you change them for every bullet hole. If you can still read the message, leave it be. And if it still has retroreflectivity at night. Here the message is gone. The whole center of that sign has been blown out with a shotgun. That message is gone. The sign needs to be replaced. You put 2 bullet holes over here in the red, drive by it, you see it during the day, drive by it at night. If it's still reflective and everything, you're good to go. But there again, if you can't read that message, it needs to be replaced. Now, windrows on the side of the road. How many people here have windrows on the side of your gravel roads? Why do you have a windrow? Because you let them put it there, right? Why would anybody want to buy gravel to leave it piled on the side of the road? You can leave the pile in the gravel pit without having to pay for it, instead of leaving it on the side of the road. And you're going to get a motor grader operator tell you, well, that's a maintenance windrow. I'm going to blade these pebbles from this side to this side so that I could fill in the holes and make it look like I've really done something. That maintenance windrow does not need to be there. If you're buying gravel, drive on that gravel. What happened here, you got your maintenance windrow down the shoulder and it rained. And the rain can't run off the road. There's no gully on this side because there's no windrow over there. The water all runs off into the ditch. But here, the water runs over to the side of the road, runs down the road next to that windrow. And then when you get to the bottom of that hill, you look down the ditch and you're going to find all your gravel because that's where it goes. Let the water drain off up here. Drive on your gravel. That's what you buy it for. And now, when we look at the shape of the roads, here you got a round top gravel road. You get a round top gravel road when you get a maintainer operator that won't change his cutting edges. If you see cutting edges going like this here, that's the kind of road you're going to have. And what happens is you get a flat on top. It gets washboardy up here, it gets holes in it, and then it rains and that water lays up there, it can't get away, can't drain off, so it soaks into your road, soaking up that road bed. And when you soak up that road bed, then you get soft spots. What you want to have there is a straight from, you have your crown in the middle and a straight flat surface here and a flat surface over here. Or not flat, you want a 4% slope on that surface, but you want it straight. You don't want that hump in it. That takes a straight cutting edge to do that. And if you have those round roads, you're not going to get those fixed in one pass over them and back. It's going to take a while. An operator has to work at that over time to get that road back in shape, but they can do that as long as they keep straight cutting edges on their moldboard. And if you wonder what your slope is on your roads, that's easy to figure out because you take a 4-foot level out here and from the center, level it up 4 feet at 4 feet and at a 1/2 inch per foot. If you're 2 inches off the ground with the end of that 4-foot level, you got a 4% slope. So it's easy to figure out what kind of slope you have. Sometimes you get that gravel buildup on the edge of the roads, and because as you're driving here, the gravel comes off your tires, it catches in the grass on the side, and pretty soon your shoulders get a little bit higher than the road surface. Now you need to go out and pull those shoulders up a little bit and get that gravel back up here. Has it got a little grass in it? Yeah, it does. It's best if you can do it early in the spring. But if you have to do it later on, maybe mow the ditches first. Mow that top, take a side delivery rake and kick that grass off into the ditch, and then come in there and pull that up, get it on the road. You got to work it out, and you can retrieve a lot of that gravel that you have left out there. Now, here's a county that they go a little bit farther than that, because they got roads that they're getting pushed down from all the heavy loads. They get short, the roads get short, they get wide because that dirt just keeps pushing out. Then what they do is they come in, they mow the in slopes. They take a motor grader in there, they pull those in slopes back up onto the road. And yeah, you get a lot of the tree root or grass roots and stuff that get up here, but they till that out. They may have a windrow this high when they start. And they keep tilling that back and forth until they get it all tilled out. And once they get it tilled out, then you end up with something that looks like this. It's all tilled. It's smooth. They run the packer on it, the roller on the motor grader, walk and roll that they have. They run that on here to get it packed. If it's too dry, they'll go put some water on it and then pack it. But you get that hard surface back again. And then you put your gravel on the center or on your driving surface. And it looks narrow here, but this is the width that driving surface is supposed to be. And you've gotten all your material back up from down here. You raise your road back up again, and you're retrieving a lot of material here that's blown off. And then you put your new gravel on and your road is good to go. Now, if they get this done and you get a 3-day soaker rain, don't go out and drive on it and complain because you got a bad road, because this is going to be mush. But once that rain is done, and people are going to be out there driving on it, so it's going to get tore up. But then they're going to go out and blade it again and roll it again. And it's going to be rock hard, and it'll be the best road you ever had. It's just that you have to go through that little time period there when you may have a mess out there. While you're doing this, whether you're doing it yourself or you're hiring someone to do it, that is a construction area. It's a construction zone. This is not a sign for a construction zone. You need to be signed back here to give people warning as to what's going on. Let them know that there's going to be a windrow on the road. There's going to be equipment working on the road. You sign it back here. You sign it back here again. Make sure they know that there's something going on, because you don't know what you might pulling back up onto that road. And you're going to get people that are going to try to drive over that windrow. And if there's a rock in it, sure enough, that one rock in a mile, that's where they're gonna try to cross, and they're gonna hit their transmission or their oil pan or whatever, and then we've got a claim coming. So make sure that you have the signing up properly. This is just a picture from a motor grader operators course that LTAP did, and like they were saying, these courses, the motor grader operator, the gravel class, the culvert installation, township officers can go to those at no charge. And they're done in local areas, so it's something that you can get to. You go onto their website, find out where training is at, and you go in and register to go to it. And like I say, they charge others for that, but for township officers, they don't charge. They do a gravel class also to let you know what is good gravel. How many people here know what good gravel is? So how do you know when you buy gravel that you're getting anything any good? Is that good gravel? It's nice and red. It should be good, right? But there's no binder in it. It's sand and a little rock. This is a close-up of right here. And there's hardly any rock in it, and there's no binder. It's sand. It's going to blow away. It's going to washboard right away. And nobody's going to be happy with that. So if you have a contractor that's crushing gravel, and they're crushing it, and they know they're going to be selling it to the county. So they're testing their gravel because the county will have a gravel spec that they need to meet with so much rock, so much sand, so much binder in there, the clay. And they keep testing, and everything is good, and everything is good, and it's going into this pile, and all of a sudden they hit a part of the pit where, oh, we got no binder, not much rock, we got a lot of sand, let's pile that over here. because that's not going to meet a county spec. When you call them to get gravel, what gravel pile do you suppose you're going to get out of it if you're not checking? Listen here, we got to keep for the guys that check their stuff, but these townships, they don't check nothing. They just hire us to haul it. We can haul it out of here. It looks nice. They don't know the difference. It's not where you have to become a gravel expert, but you should be able to walk up to a load of gravel and grab a handful of it and know, is this gravel any good or not? If you got some damp gravel and you put it in your hand and you squeeze it and you open your hand and it all runs out, it's going to do the same thing on the road. There's no binder in there. There's nothing that's going to keep it on the road. And that's what they could teach you in that gravel class as to what do you look for? How do you do this? And just some basic little things that can help you know what you should be buying. Section lines, right-of-way obstructions, things like that. Here we got a no trespassing sign on a section line. Can't do that. That's open for public travel. Oh, but then we got a road closed sign over here. But they didn't close the road because if the road was closed, they would have a type 3 barricade right here and the road closed sign on that type 3 barricade, but you could see people drive here. They put it here because the landowner back over here wants to drive on this, but he doesn't want anybody else driving on it. Doesn't work that way. If the road's open, it's open for everybody. If it's closed to everybody. No dumping allowed. I took this picture north of Bismarck, and the reason they have this sign is because people in Bismarck have a habit of, well, they get a new washer and dryer, and you got to get rid of the old one, or you get a new refrigerator, and you got to get rid of the old one. Well, they charge you $15 or $30, whatever it is, at the landfill to haul them out there. But you know, I'll get my neighbor in a 6-pack of beer. We could throw that in my pickup and haul it down here, and we can dump it 1, 2 in the morning. Nobody will ever know we were even there. So that's what they do, and they do a lot of it around there. Is this sign going to keep them from doing that? Probably not, but you know what it might do? It might keep them from driving down your section line, and they'll go down to 2 miles to your neighbors and drive down theirs. And because whatever they dump out there, you got to go clean it up. And when they could bring that refrigerator out there, a lot of times they don't just bring that. They bring all their other trash that they have in the garage also. And they bring that out, they throw it all out. There's places on section lines where you got big trash piles because they just keep bringing it out and dumping it. Obstructions in the roadway. Here we got a tree here. In a storm, that tree blew over, crossed that road. They went out here, cut the tree off and pushed it, the top part of it down into the ditch here. The hazard is still there. That's your hazard right there. That needs to go away. You can't have big pieces of trees like this right next to the driving surface here. Here's a section line, and I took a picture of this one. This is the crossroad here, and I took a picture of this section line because I wanted you to be able to see the straight line all the way up here. This is a bunch of farm equipment, some cars, junk, and it's right in the center of that section line. All of this stuff here is in the middle of the section line. And I got a phone call on that. Somebody wanted me to come out and look at it. So I went out, I took my pictures, I wrote a letter to the township. This stuff has to go away. And that was last year. Now this spring, I'm going to go back out and check and see if it's gone. If it's not gone, I'm going to send them pictures again with another letter stating that if this doesn't go away, next time your policy comes up for renewal, you won't get a renewal, you'll get a non-renewal notice. We never used to do that, but is it worth the the liability exposure that you have from all of this stuff on your section line for a $340 a year premium? No. Because this could be $1 million claim real easy. If somebody goes in there, hits that, and that could easily happen. So it's not worth a $340 premium. And with the management that we have now, we can do that. Never used to be able to do that, but we can do that now. If people aren't doing what they're supposed to get rid of hazards, we can send them a non-renewal notice. Here's a section line, nothing wrong with it. I just took a picture of it because I'd never seen one before like that. You got a fence here, you got a fence there. Nobody goes down there. They don't have a reason to. They can if they want, because it's open for public travel. I mean, you could walk down there, you could drive your ATV down there. But there's no fighting here over where the fences are supposed to be because they put them out at the edge of the right of way there. And you don't find that very often. That's why I want to take a picture of it. Mailboxes, I haven't talked about mailboxes for a lot of years, but I've had some questions on them in this past year. So I figured that I would put a little bit on here. And a mailbox post needs to be a breakaway type post, 36 to 42 inches to the bottom of the box, and set back off the road so that it doesn't interfere with snow removal. And then the box itself needs to be a postmaster approved box. Now, when I look at mailboxes, this one here, nobody lives there anymore. Railroad tie there for a post, and then whatever this wheel is sitting on, get rid of it. You go out there with a loader and lift it out of there and get rid of it. It's in your right of way. You're responsible for it. You're liable for it. When you go out there to do that, though, make sure you take a bucket of dirt with you, because when you pull the post out, you want to fill the hole. Because otherwise, you're going to have somebody here that's out walking their dog or something and fall in that hole, and now you got another hazard. And you're going to have a claim from that. So when you pull the post out, make sure that you fill the hole. Now this one, this is about an 8 or 9 inch post, not a breakaway by any means. But what caught my attention here was when I was driving down the road, I see this cat sitting on top of the mailbox post. And it's like, what's that thing doing sitting up there? And it looked like a pretty big cat, but it doesn't move. And I get closer and closer, and I find out that that is a rock. I failed to see a purpose for that rock. Other than if somebody ever hit that post, that rock is going to go back, come straight through the windshield. Don't have stuff like that out there. And then we only get better. Now this is a tractor tire. This is a railroad tie. And that tractor tire with the railroad tie in the middle of it is full of concrete. It's full of concrete. Think it'll move? Well, the guy that put it in wasn't sure if it would move or not, so he piled rocks around the backside to make sure it wouldn't. And then he come out and he put in this wood conglomeration here to try to support his mailboxes, as crooked as they are. That's got to go away. It's got to go away. You send him a letter, you tell him it's got to go away. If he doesn't get rid of it, you send him another letter telling him you have till this date for it to go away, or we come in with a payloader and take it away. And it'll take a payloader to get it out of there, as heavy as it is. But it's got to go away. This one is about a half mile or a mile down the road from this one. And this one, I don't have a problem with the post so much, other than there's no post under the box. And if anybody ever went off the road here, that box is, and the pipe, it's about a 3-inch steel pipe. That's going to come right through the windshield. And so that's where I have an issue with this one. And the mailbox posts, they're a breakaway post. It's simple. And are they going to get knocked down once in a while? Yeah, they will. But that's part of living in the country. Anybody have any questions, comments, questions? If not, thank you for being township officers, and thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Mark. I know Larry had mentioned it in his presentation as well, but we really do have to give a thank you out to North Dakota Insurance Reserve Fund for supplying the inserts. That's a large amount of money, and we really appreciate that they do that for us. One thing that I'd like to mention is I'd like to visit a little bit about the ATLR program. Is there anyone in here that actually uses that, the computer software program? The ATLR is annual township ledger report. It's a computer software program that is actually designed by Marty Visto. There's been several counties that have been using it for many years. It takes the place of all your paper reports, and very, very good computer program. Like I said, there are several townships that are using it. Check with your auditor. You do have to work along with your auditor on it. If they're in favor of it, that's great. It'd be great to get updated and get into a computer program. There's been different ways that different counties have handled it. Some counties have actually purchased it and they sell it back to the townships. Some counties have bought it and they've actually given it to the townships. And then there have been county associations that have bought it, and then they turn around and sell it to the townships. And it's a program that's very good. Easy to use once it's set up. Probably the only thing that I would kind of suggest to you, that if you do go that route, make sure you have a separate computer for it. If you have one that you're not using, that you can make it fit and work with it just for township stuff, or if you purchase a new one for your township, just make it a little bit easier if you ever change clerks or whatever, that actually information goes with the new clerk and so on. So, but like I said, visit with your auditor. If it's something that they're interested in, they can get a hold of me, or you can get a hold of me for more information on it, and I can give you some contact information on it. So with that, I am going to turn this over to Mr. Tom Moe.
Hey, thank you, Mr. President. I can tell I'm getting farther south in the state because it's only 3 below. What a deal. What a deal. It was about 10 below in Mayville I saw today, and we were in Langdon last night, and it was nice, cool, crisp 26 below this morning when we got up, because we were there last night. So it must be township workshop week when we get weather like this. So it's good to be out and about, and regardless of the cold weather, good to see everybody. Match a name with a voice and a face. That's good to do that. See some old friends, make some new ones. So we're going to talk a little bit about tonight about a few things, few issues. And so these are kind of some general categories of questions that I get in the office. Meeting stuff, who gets to vote, when we have our meetings, how do you run a meeting, what's our notice requirement, and who gets to vote, and how we keep minutes and all that kind of stuff. A lot of road questions, of course, dealing with obstacle clearance and trees in a ditch and bales and rocks and crops and mailboxes and all that stuff that gives us problem areas. Of course, in the eastern part of the state, we talk a lot about water and culverts, and in the western part of the state, we talk about cattle guards. So those are pretty common questions. And we're getting quite a few zoning kinds of questions as well for those townships that are zoned. And so, especially, we're starting to see some more wind tower, cell tower stuff kind of things as well. So those are kind of the general areas that we talk about in almost all the time. And most of those questions can all be answered with your handbook. And for you Zoomers out there, we got about, I think we got about a dozen folks on Zoom with us tonight. So that's why we got to stand in front of this camera. We can't move around because they can't see us. But you Zoomers out there, this is the handbook that we're using. And you guys out there, you're going to promise something for me, aren't you, about this book? What are you going to say? What are you going to promise me? That you're going to, I know, you're going to tell me you're going to read it, but what are you going to do before you read it? You're going to take it out of the plastic, right? So make sure you get that done. Take it out of the plastic and use it. And when you get in there, here's what you're going to find. Our century code is divided into certain sections, and we call them titles. And anything that's in title 58, that's about 25, 30 pages. That's all township stuff. That's where you're going to find out about supervisor duties and officer meetings and meeting notices and who gets to vote and all that stuff about township. That's all in 58 dash a number. That's so dog ear that section once you get it out of the plastic. Anything to 24 dash a number, that's all road stuff. So section lines and right of ways and all, that's where all that stuff's at. It's in 24. And zoning is in 58 as well. Plus there's some county zoning chapters. And then of course, for those of you that are zoned, you got your own zoning ordinances that would govern what you do too. So a couple others, I don't have a slide on this. If it's a 57 dash a number, that's taxes. That has to do with taxes. And 44 is open records and open meetings. Okay, so you take a look at those 3 or 4 sections, you're going to probably answer most of your questions, I think. And those of you who've been with us for a while, you know that you've been doing pretty well on this stuff, and you've been looking at the handbook. And so I think it's probably time to check and see how you're doing. So I think it's time for a little township officer quiz here. So like this little fella, take out your pencils and papers and see how you do. You don't have to do that, but I got a few questions. Let's see how you do here. First one, landowner who lives in town cannot attend a township meeting. True or false? You got that one. That's false. A landowner who lives in town, of course, can attend a township meeting. And all our meetings are public. Anybody can be there. That doesn't matter. So then I would imagine this guy here that lives in town, he probably would want to come to that meeting and see what you rascals are up to, right? What is it this landowner cannot do, however? Can't vote. And that's always bothersome for a lot of folks because they've been living on the farm for a long time. Finally moved off the farm, bought a house in town. And of course, they're still paying taxes out in the farm. They still want to come out and see what's going on, but can't vote out there because in our country, you vote where you live, of course. And so that's going to be problematic. And so sometimes we just got to educate those folks about that. Certainly can attend, certainly can participate, but just can't vote at that meeting. Here's another one. To be eligible to vote at a township meeting, so we just found that out. You got to be a resident. Okay, we know that, but do you have to own at least 10 acres land? Do you have to own some land? Land ownership? That's false. To be eligible, you got to be just a resident. Of course, you got to be a citizen and 18 and all that stuff. But land ownership is not a requirement for voting. We fought a revolution over that, so we don't have to worry about that. So you got somebody renting a farmstead, they're a resident, they can vote at that meeting. Okay, you did okay on that one. Okay, here's one. Township can change its annual meeting date to a day later in the spring, but not later than June 1st. True or false? You get those snowbirds though, don't you? They show up in July and they want to have their meeting, finally come back from down south. Can't change their meeting. Is that what you're saying? That's correct. False. Cannot change its annual meeting. We're third Tuesday in March, been that way since 1889, and we haven't had any changes. We've talked about maybe going to the legislature, because the legislature would have to change the state law. We've talked about maybe trying to make a change on that. I'm not so sure what kind of changes we would come up with. I mean, what kind of date would we pick? I don't know.
You know, and we're stuck pretty much in March because we got to get everything done before the equalization meeting in April anyway. So that's probably what we're looking at is sometime in this time frame. So Tuesday in March, I get the county newspapers, you know, and every once in a while I'll look at the county newspapers, and there's always some townships always got a meeting on the wrong day in their list. And so don't be that guy. Because I think that meeting could be challenged. I think somebody could challenge you and because it's probably not the proper time to do that. So don't get in that box here. So, okay, you got that one. Oh, there's another question. City adopts extraterritorial or ET zoning. The adjacent township then gives up jurisdiction over its roads within that ET zone. True or false? You know, an ET, extraterritorial zoning, that's when you got a city, and of course they go out, say, a half mile or a mile, and they're going to say, well, we want to kind of control it a little bit outside the outskirts of the city. Make sure that nobody builds a slaughterhouse right outside outside the city there. Something like that. And so they want to control that. So does this used to give up your roads as well, you think? Yeah, that's false. That's false. You don't give up jurisdiction. ET or extraterritorial zoning is only for that purpose, just for zoning, nothing else. And so that house that's within that ET zone, that guy's still paying township taxes. Not a city resident paying township taxes. It's still your deal. Okay. But be careful about this word. What's that one? Annexation. What's that mean? Annexation. What's that mean? You, Spiritwood, you guys should know what that means, right? City moves its city limit line. Now that's a different deal. Now all of a sudden that house that was on the edge of town, now it's a city resident. They're no longer township residents. They're no longer paying township taxes. They're paying city taxes. They're city residents. They don't vote in the township anymore because they're not township residents. So annexations when we actually physically move the city limit line out. And that's different than that ET zone. So don't mix those up. And sometimes we get township officers that get a little fuzzy on that. And so if you got a city, it doesn't have to be a big city. If you got a city or town in your township, you always kind of want to know where exactly is that city limit line, because that's where your line of demarcation, line of jurisdiction is. And oftentimes it's not. We kind of think we know where it's at, but sometimes it's different from what we thought. So, okay, you got that one. That's good. All right, what do we got here? Oh yeah, seller land, kind of another zoning question. Gives the buyer a deed, and in that deed, whereas and wherefore and all that other legalese that us guys come up with. But there's a sentence in there that the seller said there can be no outbuildings constructed on the property, quote unquote. Townships can be required to enforce that restriction under their zoning authority. True or false? Well, here's how it happens. And before you answer that so fast, let's think about this. So you got so the guy shows up in township supervisor meeting and says, the guy out there is building a yard barn and he's not supposed to do that. So township, we want you to take that down. Make sure you go out and tell him you can't do that. Are you supposed to do that? That's false as well. That's what we call a deed restriction. That's a private deal between the seller and the buyer. That's not your deal. You got enough stuff to do. You don't need to do that too. So if they show up and they want you to try to deal with their, sometimes it's no outbuildings, or it's, out on a lake, you can only have one dock, or you got to have a certain paint color, in your house, all that kind of stuff that sometimes they do that. In the charitable sense, sometimes we used to see, we'll give you a quarter of land if you build a church in the corner. Well, that was pretty common back then. That was kind of a common restriction, but that's all private stuff. Be careful though, because if you are zoned, and sometimes in zoning rules, especially in those subdivisions around the bigger towns, they'll have no yard barns, no outbuildings. They'll have that. That is a zoning thing because it's in the zoning ordinance, and you got to be a little careful about that. So deal with the stuff you have jurisdiction over. Don't worry about the stuff you don't have any authority over. Like I say, you got enough stuff to do. You don't need to do this too. Okay, I think you got that one. Oh yeah, township meeting minutes or public records. A person requesting copies of those minutes must have a valid reason for seeing the minutes. True or false? Well, you know those people, right? You know, I want to see copies of your minutes. How many? Well, the last 40 years worth. Wow. What do you want to see those for, right? That's not great. There's no, that's false. No reason for the request is needed, okay? You can, those are public records and you don't have to say why we want to look at them. But here's the issue for townships. You gotta, you know, you get that request, you gotta get that out fairly soon, in a reasonable time. You know, and here's the problem with townships. You know, we don't have a staff. We don't say, okay, employee, go and copy those records for us. Well, that's us that has to do that. And so, and a lot of us don't have a copy machine at home because that's where our office is at home. So we got to run to the elevator and use theirs. We got to go to the school or the church. We got to go use theirs, and it's going to take. So we can't get it done today, you know. But don't wait 5-6 months either to get it done. So that's unreasonable. So we've had some, you know, the AGs had to slap some hands on some townships that got requested and they just sat on it and never finished and never got it done. And so that's it. It gets to be unreasonable. So question, go ahead. You got to pay, you can charge a reasonable fee. I think the statute, Jerry, help me, I think it was 25 cents, wasn't it, Jerry? Yeah, 25 cents is what this law said. You can charge, and you get the first hour copying free, but after that, you can, a reasonable charge. And you can collect it before you give them the copies, which is nice too. So then the money, show me the money where your mouth is here. So yeah, so here's what it's going to cost you. Here's our estimate. Give me the money, then we'll go get the copies done. So, but sir. How long the question for the Zoomers out there, how long do you keep your records? It depends on what typical lawyer answer, right? It depends. Depends on what the record is. Okay. Yeah. Minutes, of course, you got to keep forever. If you throw away a set of minutes, I will come back and haunt you. Okay. Don't you dare throw away any minutes, because I can't tell you how many times we've had to go back to, there's some issue and they'll say, well, how long, you know, sometimes it's, for example, it's a road that goes around a slough, you know, and so how long has it been there? Been there for 80 years. Well, did you have an easement? Nah, probably not. Well, when do you think it was? Well, it's probably back before the war, probably the late 30s. Well, let's go back in the late 30s. And maybe in the minutes of the annual meeting, you know, Frank Jones showed up and said, yeah, you can go have a road around the slough. Okay. Let's see. So yeah, it happens all the time. I got to go look through those old minutes. So don't be throwing the minutes away. In the clerk's duties, in Title 58, I'm not sure which one, the 58-08 or something like that, but whatever, there's a list of the clerk's duties there, clerk section. And in one of those paragraphs, it says, these are the records that you can throw after 10 years. And there's a list of those, okay? There's a list of those. In the clerk section of the Title 58, these records can be thrown after 10 years. It's poll books and old receipts and stuff like that. So yeah. So good question. Okay. Okay. Township's got several road intersections where farmers planted corn in the right of way, and the height of the corn blocks the view of oncoming traffic. And of course, what's going to happen here, we're going to have an accident because we can't see around the corner, can't see around the corn. Farmer, but not the township, will have liability for those accidents. What do you think? True or false? And that's also, you guys are doing really well here. If our township will have potential liability, sure. Why? What did the township do wrong here? What's the township done wrong? Let you plan it the right way. Sure. Well, he didn't ask us, right? But it is, okay. So you've got it becomes an obstacle. You know, a corn plant that's 6 inches tall, not a big deal, but it's going to grow. It's going to be 6, 7, 8, 9 feet tall. Pretty soon, can't see around. That's an obstacle, just like a tree, a rock, a bale, a mailbox. Same thing. Now, of course, you hit that stalk of corn, and probably not going to hurt much, but you can't see, and so that's the problem. There it becomes an obstacle. So the township's going to have some responsibility to get that out of there. And basically, it's because you let them plant the right of way. Farmers probably also going to have some responsibility too. Okay, I think, but township's going to be defenseless because you allowed it to happen. So, all right, you did well there. Supervisor meetings do require notice, but do not need to have an agenda posted. Now, you've been to county commission meetings. They've always got an agenda on the door, you know, school boards, they always got an agenda on the door. You can get, they give you one. Here's what we're going to talk about tonight. The township officers have to do that. Don't need to have an agenda. What do you think? Is that true or false? That's false. That's false. We do. There was an AG's opinion out there that said that you're supposed to have an agenda. Here's another one of those things that you're not going to do. I know that. Right? You're not going to do that. Why is that? Because we don't have an office. We don't have a meeting room. We're meeting out the back of a pickup, and we're not going to post a notice. And here's what we're going to talk about. You don't do that. But there's been some situations where you get somebody making a complaint, and they try to catch. What did this township do wrong? Well, they never had an agenda. Right? So that's just one of those rules we know you're going to break. Not much we can do about it. But be aware there's a rule. And the bigger thing there is the first part of that, you know, we require notice. Okay. And so this gets to be problematic for townships as well. See that a lot of this open records and open meeting stuff is tough for townships because first of all, there's the supervisor, there's 3 of us, right? Unless you have 5. So some townships have 5 supervisors, but if you've got 3 supervisors, 2 of you get together, that's a quorum, that's a meeting. And so there, the 2 of you are at the fertilizer plant in the morning having a cup of coffee, and man, that was a good snow last night. Yeah, we better get the plow out. Bingo! You just made a decision at an illegal meeting, didn't you? Sure, because you had no notice on that. And that happens all the time. We know that. That happens all the time. So you got to be careful about that kind of thing. And so I always say, you know, a couple things here with supervisor. And remember, every political subdivision in this state, townships, city councils, county commissioners, school boards, water boards, library boards, everybody, park board, everybody's got to give notice. It's all public meetings. Supervisor meetings, you can now remember the annual meeting coming up now, that's a meeting of the residents, that requires newspaper notice. You know that, right? You got to have newspaper notice for that. But supervisor meetings, that's the 3 of you. It's a public meeting, anybody can be there, okay? But you got to have notice. What notice is that? Notice to the county auditor, okay? Every political subdivision, which I just mentioned there, every one of those are supposed to notify the county auditor of your meeting, and that's your reasonable notice. No newspaper notice required for the supervisor meeting, unless that's your policy, of course, and some townships do that. But all you need is have reasonable notice, and that includes notice to the county auditor. So how are we going to do this fertilizer meeting? How are we going to do that? Well, here's one way around it. I would suggest to have a monthly meeting set. Okay, let's meet the 3rd Friday of every month or the 4th Tuesday, whatever, pick a date. Send 1 letter once a year to the county auditor. There's your notice. Okay, there's your meeting schedule set. You got 1 letter. You probably can email it. There's your notice. And so then those 2 guys that meet at the fertilizer plant, you know, okay, we should, although blowing snow is probably a little bit more of an emergency. There's a situation there, but you know, general garden variety kind of things. Okay, well, that time we talked about it, but we got a meeting next week. Let's talk about it officially there, and we'll get it in the minutes, and we'll do it that way. So, and then also, of course, another nice thing about monthly meetings is if you have them scheduled, if somebody calls, you know, that guy that calls you up at 10 o'clock at night griping about something. Well, first of all, it's just here's what you do: come to our regular meeting next week. That's our regular meeting date, and we'll see you there. Click, hang up on. Okay, because it's late at night, right? You don't have to, you're not on the clock 365, 24 hours a day. So that helps you too if you have a preset meeting. I think I would strongly suggest doing that. So anybody doing it by one now? Is anybody doing that? Anybody got a monthly meeting? That's a good idea, I think. You do? Okay, good. Supervisor resigns. The clerk can be appointed to the vacant supervisor position and continue to serve as clerk as well. True or false? You know, that's, you know, if you have a resignation or vacancy, we can appoint. That's how you fill a vacancy. You can appoint to fill. And a clerk would be a good person to do it, right? Can that clerk still be clerk? Supervisor, that's false. Can't serve two. Can't be. That's one of those positions you gotta have two separate people there. Okay, so. But there is a point there. If you have a vacancy, then the two remaining supervisors can appoint to fill it out. So then the clerk could possibly be that person. But then if you do appoint the clerk, you're gonna have to appoint a new clerk too. So get that question quite a bit. Okay. Oh, fence question. Fence that's constructed on the center of a prairie trail is grandfathered in if the fence. Why is it never grandmothered, by the way? It's always grandfathered. If the fence has been there for at least 20 years, so the township cannot order its removal. You know, here's what happens, you know, the land changes hands and the guy says, what's that fence there? Well, it's been there forever. Well, take it down. And then the guy that's got the fence, you can't take that fence down there. It's been there forever. It's grandfathered in. You take that fence down and I'll see ya. Oh, I can hear it all the time, right? Can you order that removal? That's a false statement. Of course you can remove it. Fences in the right of way, they're obstacles. And that's your deal. And that's exactly what happens is that the fence has been there for a while, but then land changes hands and says, I want that fence out of there. I want to use the right of way because I got to get my equipment down there. That's what it's for. And so you can certainly give permission to fence across or fence down. You can certainly give permission to do that, but with the proviso that, hey, you're going to have to move it when we tell you to. You know, no ifs, ands, or buts, because it's an obstacle in the right of way. And they fuss and they stew, but they're in the law. So no such thing as a grandfathered fence. Okay, I think you did well. They're all false. You probably saw that. So questions from anybody? Anybody got any questions? That tree is at 34 feet, by the way. I did measure it, so I did measure it. It's a nice looking tree, though, isn't it? Yeah. I did tell that township with that tree, though. I told them, I said, once that thing is dead, get it out of there because it's just an accident waiting to happen. So. Wait, right on the slough that's in the right of way. So the slough is in the right of way, right? Yeah, okay. And so we got a road that's on a section line and it goes around the slough and we've been using it for, you know, years and years and years and years. So is that a public road? Well, that's the question, because what happens, my guess is the land changes hands and the new guy says, get that road out of there. What's it doing there, right? And that's a classic. I get that question 5 times a year, I'm sure. And so the deal is, you know, do you have an easement? That's easy. And of course they don't, you know, and so they probably, you know, how long has the road been there? It's been there for 89 years, 100 years. How did that road get there 100 years ago? Well, they probably talked to the landowner at the time and the landowner said, sure, you can do that. That's what we call a handshake easement, basically what it is, okay? And so people started driving it back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and that's how it got there. And then probably eventually the township started maintaining it and putting some gravel on it, and sure. So that one there, if that's been happening, you can go, that's called a road by prescription. I mean, you've been using it for at least 20 years. The public's been using it for at least 20 years. And so it's been that's the prescribed period, thus the term. And then you can make a public road out of it. The issue then is, of course, is a judge is going to have to sign that order. So you gotta basically sue the guy in court and bring your evidence in, and it's been there forever, and then the judge will rubber stamp it and the way it goes. So yeah. You know, the township, of course, you can make that decision on your own, and then of course, then it's up to the landowner to challenge you, and you end up in front of a judge eventually anyway, probably, if he really wants to fight you on it. But if it's been there that long, it's going to be a road by prescription. The issue sometimes is how wide is it, you know, because now we're not in that we're outside the 66 feet, so all bets are off as to how wide it's going to be. So those are tough situations. So I always say, if you got those kind of roads and you have a cooperating landowner now, get the easement now. You can do it now. And so you would say, you know, you could have a picture and you could draw it on the see attached map, and and you could have draw up a document that just says he allows he gives an easement to the township for the road around the slough and section number so and so, and see attached picture and draw it, and then put that in your minutes, and then you've got it. So if you have a cooperating landowner now, get those things down on paper. That's the way to do that. So, but yeah, I get half dozen of those questions every year on that, and it's always because land's changed hands, and the new guy wants to get it out of that. That's usually what it is. So, what else we got for questions? Anybody else got any? Yes, sir, in the back room.
Legally responsible for bus routes and mail routes to remove the snow?
Well, that's a good one. You know, here's a statement that I'm sure you'll wonder about that. Do you have an obligation to maintain roads? Probably not. But you have a road system. So once you have a road system, then you got to take care of it. You got to make sure there's no hazard. Snow is probably a hazard. That also, you got the squeaky wheel gets the grease. You got people living there, they're paying the taxes. Of course, they're going to want to get that done. And you add the school bus route or the mail route in there. Of course, the reason that the school is using that road because they know you're plowing snow, because they know that you're taking care of the road. That's why it's a school bus route. That's why it's a mail route, because they know that that's a road in the system. You're getting gas tax for it, so you've got some obligation to do some work on, I think. So snow removal, of course, is different probably than graveling and maintaining it and keeping it safe for the traveling public, because if it's truly blocked with snow, nobody's going to drive on it. So that's the ultimate in safety. Nobody's going to drive it. Problem is, you got grandma sitting out at the end of the lane and she can't get out of there, or nor can the ambulance get there. So you got that issue as well. So yeah, if you have the school bus routes and you've got mail routes, you've got a responsibility there, because you are getting public funds. You have a responsibility. So snow removal, and when you think about snow removal, why do you remove snow on some roads and not others? It's a priority system. That's what it is. Some roads have higher priority because that's where people are living. That's where the school bus is. Some roads we don't have to work on snow because there's nobody living there. Nobody needs to use it in the wintertime. You make that it's a policy decision, a priority decision. So what it is. So yeah, those are tough. I know. And here again, we got spoiled last year with no snow. But now all of a sudden we're burning up snow removal budgets again. Anybody out there on the Zoom? Anybody? You guys got any questions at all? You sure can pipe in if you want. Anybody else? Over here, yeah.
Zoom service, in some way to request.
The Zoom service? You mean electronic stuff like Larry, there's some new rules on that, right?
Yeah. You conduct the local offer to have an influence.
So you're not required to do the electronic meetings in the Zoom, but if you do use Zoom, then you have to offer the link to people. It has to be there so people can use it. Yeah. Okay, darn Zoom guys. No, that's a fair deal. And then of course I know that too. So the question was, do you have to required to provide Zoom and provide the electronic meeting? No, you're not required to do that. But if you do, like we're doing tonight, then we had to make that link available so that people could get it. So it has to be there. They don't have to request it or anything like that. So you have to make it available. So that's a decision you got to make. So, and my guess is we're probably going to have to go more and more to that, because we got people that are not, You know, those snowbirds in Arizona, they sure could join in with a electronic meeting. You know, they obviously their votes would have to be public, which is, you know, it's hard to do a secret ballot over Zoom, but yeah, we're going to see more and more of it, I think. So, yeah. Back here, who was the question? Yes, sir. Red shirt there. Yeah, you, yeah, yep. All I can see is one side of the red shirt, so.
Right away, on north side of the road. The seven. Who we do to alleviate that problem in the future?
Question is, got a guy that planted trees along the right of way. The setback for the county is farther out than that. Where is it from this regard to 33-foot line? Where is it at? So it's 34 feet, is it? Okay. So are you zoned? Do you have a setback yourself? Okay, they don't. Okay, so on all roads or just their roads? Now that's interesting. You know, so if, let's back up here. We're assuming a section line, right? Okay, so on a section line, you got 33 feet either side of the center. There it is, okay, right there in my up there, okay? And so within the 33 feet, you have full control of that, no trees in there. Once it goes to 34 feet, then you've lost control over that. If you have a setback requirement yourself as a township, then of course that would control. Now, if the county's got a setback on all roads, including township roads, then I guess then that would control, and it would be up to the landowner to challenge that, okay? The problem is who's going to enforce this thing. So it's a county, let's assume the county setback is okay and it's been properly noticed and all that stuff. Who's supposed to enforce that? Do they make the township enforce that then? That's a question, you know, and I don't know. Yeah, I don't know, because you'd have to take a look at the county's setback rules in the first place, and they probably have some sort of enforcement provision in there. What county are we talking about? Stutzman, okay, yeah. That's a tough one. You know, that's why we like to see you have your own setbacks, you know. So then if that's the case, if you have authority, then you can go and remove that tree, even though it's outside the 33 foot, because you have a setback ordinance, and that's the whole idea. So you don't have that tree, then that's going to be a snow catcher right there. Even if it's 34, that's a snow catcher. Get that stuff out of there. And you can do that by having setbacks. So it's a different question with that county. If we'll assume that the county setback ordinance that you mentioned is valid, then I would imagine that probably the township is subject to being the controller, being the police there, probably is what they're going to say, my guess would be, unless there's some agreement to the contrary. But
We can kind of leave every color.
oh, sure. Yeah, because they'll do that, right? Yeah. Sometimes you got to have a little one-sided discussion with these guys that are planting trees and say, knock it off. You know, this is just giving us troubles. It's going to be troubles. Not me, you say, because when the time the tree's gone, I'm gone too. But it's the guy that's going to be sitting in the township chair after me is going to have to deal with it. So, yeah. So, what else? Arvid, you had a question? Arvid, did you have a question? Arvid?
One.
Well, there again, you know, you can have the electronic meetings, and you got to make the link available, okay? And of course, the issue there is if you're attending the meeting from electronically, how do you do a secret ballot? You can't do it, you know. So that you just have to agree that your voting is going to be done. You know, so everybody knows what you're doing. And of course, if it's been a supervisor doing this for 3 years, also got reelected. So you get what you pay for there, you know. So yeah. So we got any other questions? Any other questions at all? We'll be on for a while. Yes, ma'am. Yes. If the question, if the people are bailing the ditches, and of course we'd like to see that done. Okay. Yeah. But, you know, if the bail is there, you know, it's gonna be, it's an obstacle, okay, and we know that, and so we want to get those things out of there as soon as possible. So, yeah, it's a liability issue, you know, but there again, the bail been there for a week, has it been there for, you know, been there for 6 months, you know, that there comes a point in time when we got to get a match going here. You know, you got to fire is what you got to do, you know. Well, I mean, that's how we're the lesson, you know, you can bail a ditch, but you got to get those bails out because we got some liability issues, you know. Mark, can we sign that in any way you can think of? Mark, is there any signing we could do if we got some bales in a ditch temporarily? Yeah. Yeah, you know, I suppose you could have some sort of a warning sign. I don't know, but you know, it's a double-edged sword. You know, we want, you know, hey, we need the hay. It's good hay. We want you to bail it. It's, you know, you're the adjacent guy, or you got permission from the adjacent guy. That's a good deal, but that's what you call a cross your fingers deal. You just hope that nothing happens, you know, but we gotta get after the guy. We gotta get him moved as soon as we possibly can. So, yeah, so. And talking about a guy that had a lot of hay in the ditch this last year, that was our president. You didn't have much hay in the ditch, did you? He was pretty dry out there. I'll turn it over to Lee. Thank you very much. And Mr. President, you got it. So.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, with that, that concludes our program for tonight. I thank you for all attending and thanks for being township officers. Drive safe.